Hi everyone, how are you? Welcome to this Limiting Beliefs Summit. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited that you're here and that you chose to spend time with all of us speakers that have been gathered through Lisa and Jeff, which Lisa and Jeff, thank you so much for putting together these global summits so that we can use it as a time to connect with one another and to support and offer value and help to others as we go through this trying time right now, right, with this pandemic. So today's topic for us is limiting beliefs. So let's talk about that. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Dr. Kelly Ray Brown, and I am a mindset coach, notably known as an inner critic tamer. I help those work through their limiting beliefs in order to tame this rascal right here, our inner critic, who I'll reference as I talk today. So I got some notes here, so you might see me looking over at these notes, but I want to make sure that I'm staying on task and being mindful of the time that we've been allotted to talk about this. So limiting beliefs are like paddling upstream to your success. Sounds really weird, right? How could that be? Limiting beliefs truly are like that. Imagine going down in a canoe to the waterfront on the river, turning it and facing it upstream, getting in it and paddling like mad, trying to successfully move forward. It would be tireless. It could even be exhausting. And that's kind of how limiting beliefs could be. So it's essential for us to first understand what are limiting beliefs and where do they come from. Limiting beliefs are those things that have been created and labeled from an early time period in our life. And dare I say, probably even in utero. I know that might sound a little weird, but as we go through and we learn a little bit more about the things that limiting beliefs do and conjure up in us and feelings in that, you'll understand how that could be possible while being in your mother's womb, where you could have established and created some limiting beliefs. So for example, we have in our lives many experiences, and those experiences again happened from a very young time, whether they happened to us personally or it's something that we've observed and witnessed in something that was happening. They created labels. We ourselves created labels for those experiences. Happy, sad, scary, angry, you name it. All of those get labels, and these labels formulate our beliefs. So each time we experience a feeling that associates with that label, we stack those experiences on top of our memory banks of our beliefs. So I'm a rather visual person, so how I see this is I picture this little Albert Einstein dude inside of our heads here. I also refer to that as the inner critic. So this little Albert Einstein dude is sitting in this room filled with file cabinets or CPUs, if that's how you would resonate, for something that stores information. And in these file cabinets, we have created these little labels such as hurt, sad, shame, guilt, anger, happy, joy, giddy, whatever it may be, we have labeled those in those file cabinets. And in each file cabinet, we have our own stories that are associated with these labeled cabinets. For instance, worth, love, confidence, unlovable, insignificant, invisible, etc. Within each of these experiences that has happened, big or small, sometimes it's the little tiny small ones that really get us out of left field somewhere. We're not even aware of it. But this little Einstein dude goes along and he marks and labels everything based on this experience and what we feel as a result of that experience. And he goes and puts it in the appropriate cabinets. So with each experience, we have an opportunity to have an internal feeling associated with that experience, with that label. And that comes out in our body some way, some shape, form. So for example, when one feels joy or happiness, usually you can feel light, you can feel freedom, you can feel openness, expansion. And when one feels sadness, for instance, there's that feeling of kind of closing in, feeling a heaviness. You could feel a tiredness or an exhaustion or very, very weepy. Those are feelings that would go along with sadness. So as we go through from infancy to adolescence to adulthood and beyond, well, what's beyond adulthood? I guess the afterlife. But let's just stick with the three: infancy, adolescence, and adulthood. You can imagine the amount of experiences that you have personally experienced, that you've witnessed, that you've observed, and you have now stacked these experiences. And this little Einstein guy, your inner critic, has gone around. He's labeled every single one of them. He's a fantastic record keeper. And he goes and labels all of these, and he goes and files them in the appropriate cabinets, for you, for your protection, because, that's what his job is. So, and regardless of what these labelings are, whether they're right or wrong, means nothing. It's what it means to you. So we'll talk about that later. Anyway, so you have been around someone, have you been around somebody who gets easily upset and angry, and that over what seems like the littlest thing? I mean, really upset, just ignites for no reason. Or what about somebody who gets easily frightened or sad or defensive or self-sabotaging? That person that no matter how much you compliment them, they put themselves down, or they undermine your compliment for the sake of, because they don't feel good about themselves, or they don't feel worthy or deserving of that compliment. Come on, let's be real here. Raise your hands. Have any of you felt these before? I know I sure have, and I know I'm not the only one that has felt these and experienced these. These are all examples of people who have more than likely in their lifetime have practiced these feelings and do so from an unconscious state. So what is a conscious state and an unconscious state and a subconscious state? These are buzzwords that are not new to the industry or to the world at large, yet there might be differentiations in that. So let me just give you my perspective of what I see those as, and I'll give you an example. So first of all, unconscious and subconscious are the same thing. It's just like tomato or tomato, potato or potato. They're interchangeable. They are the same thing. So when do we use our conscious mind? Here's an example. Remember when you were first learning how to drive a car when you were 15, 16, or however old you were when you first started driving a car? When you got in the car, you consciously paid attention to where you put your hands on the steering wheel. You consciously adjusted the mirrors so that you could see in all areas to keep yourself safe. You consciously turned the ignition on, and you consciously looked down to put the car in drive or reverse, whichever was applicable at the time. And you did this at a conscious state for a little while. And then let's fast forward 6 months, 8 months. You're jumping in the car, turning on the thing, and zooming down the road with your favorite song on the radio blasting. Why? Now you're doing it from an unconscious state. That state that has been practiced so much that you no longer even have to think about it. That, my friends, is how we operate from our limiting beliefs. We've practiced them. So, there is, this is where our little Einstein dude comes into play. You see, he's not merely a file room clerk. Oh no, Oh no, he doesn't just label these things and file them neatly away and call it a day. No, no, he's so much more than that. He also is the one that triggers these deeper, sometimes seemingly uncontrollable emotions that we have that just come out of seemingly nowhere. You see, when a situation occurs that triggers these emotions, anger or disappointment or frustration, for instance, he runs to those file cabinets and he looks for all of the evidence to produce that feeling of outrage, that feeling of, and then, therefore, you have this outburst. You start yelling, you start raging, whatever it might be. And more often than not, you're doing that without even thinking. You're doing that from that unconscious state. However, has there been times when you thought to yourself, what in the world is going on? Why did I do that? Why did I say that? Why did I react that way? It really wasn't that big of a deal, but why did I have such passion and such angst come up in me? Hopefully that explains a little bit and makes a little bit more sense where these outbursts come from, because it's the energy, the feelings that we have built up over time that this little Einstein dune has put in our file cabinets that labeled anger. Okay, so when a situation presents itself to justify anger, oh man, I'm going to come give you a stack of this stuff, and without even thinking, you're blah, out there. And that's how this works. We're not even thinking about it. So, now that you have an idea of where and how these limiting beliefs are created, let's talk about how to identify them. The few examples I shared above may be easy and seem real clear now, but let's talk about those things a little bit further down, and how they can knock us off our game. And quite honestly, these are the same things that we identify ourselves as. I know it's hard to believe that we maybe identify ourselves. We don't identify ourselves as a rager or, a depressed person or a workaholic or anything like that. We don't generally do that. Sometimes we do. I know that you know people that will even say things like, well, that's just who I am. I'm this. And therefore has either maybe even given up on the option of that they could potentially be anybody else. That's the person that's continuing to be in their canoe rowing up against the current of the river. That just sounds exhausting to me. And I know there has to be another way to do that, right? Would you want to know another way to do that? Let me know if you would like to know that. So let's talk about some others that might be a little bit, may not be the necessary label that you would hold, but see if the description somehow doesn't maybe resonate, all right? So first one is the perfectionist. Sets high standards, usually unobtainable standards, and struggles with completing them because things just aren't perfect. The underminer. So the underminer is one who undermines your self-confidence and abilities, so you stay stuck and rarely take chances. The guilt tripper criticizes you for past wrongdoings and lives through distorted standards that were once set by your family, community, and maybe even your culture. The molder tries to get you to fit in certain shapes and standards set by your family, community, and culture, and fears showing up as your true, authentic self, because that could lead to potential rejection and abandonment. The destroyer attacks your self-worth, says you are inherently flawed and undeserving of basic respect, understanding, and love. The taskmaster pushes you to keep going and fears if you stop, you will become lazy or others will judge you as a failure. Now, this could be a really big one right now for people during this pandemic, as so many of us for the last couple of months have been in the shelter in place and not an essential worker. And this could be really triggering you right now to feel like you don't have a purpose, feel like if I don't keep going, then I am going to become lazy and everything's going to fail and it's just not going to work out and I'll never recover from this. This might be a really good time to look at some of those limiting beliefs to see if in fact they are true. The last one I have here on my list is the inner controller. Tries to control your impulses around things like eating, drinking, spending, and sex, often resorting to harsh tactics such as severe calorie reduction, obsessive gym working out, body shaming, just any of those things could fall under the inner controller who's trying to keep you safe. As you hear these descriptions, you may be having reactions. You may be feeling a trigger of resonance with what you're hearing here right now. And this little inner critic, I can tell you, doesn't like it. Could be having an inner dialogue or, yeah, you're wrong, or I don't like what I'm hearing, or this is dumb, or, ooh, I never thought about that before. Ooh, this really kind of seems to resonate. What do I do with it now? And perhaps like me, you're experiencing a number of these different titles that I just listed off. I certainly have gone through some of the ebb and the flow of them during this pandemic. And, I think it would be safe to say that many of us have and are. These are all merely a few of the attributes that can shed some light on things, of understanding beliefs and where they come from. So now let's address this inner critic, this little Einstein dude, who opens from their limiting belief and distortion. How do we tame this rascal? That's the ultimate game, right? Success happens in many ways, and it begins with awareness. The fact that any one of you have resonated with any of these examples I've just given means that you're open to living more vibrantly, living more wholly, living more freely, whatever it may be. Oftentimes through our awareness comes opportunities for growth. And conversely, if we don't have enough understanding or enough practice or enough experience or somebody to help walk us through these things, we can give up before success happens. We could then internalize that we're not good enough, that we're not capable of being anything different than what we are, which is all this little inner critic wants, is for things to remain status quo for sure. Remember, your inner critic, your unconscious or subconscious mind, has been playing their role, and their role, quite honestly, is rather primal. It's a distorted primal way of being, but it wants to keep you safe. That's what it's designed to do. And so how does it keep you safe? By identifying this is how we react when we have this feeling. Again, whether it's warranted or not, that's what our inner critic wants to do, is to ultimately keep you safe, and has been doing this for a very, very long time. And so have you. It's when you become aware that there's disruptions in your lives, whether it be your career, your relationship with your money, relationship with partners, family members, your personal growth, your spirituality, any of those things. When you become aware that there's something that doesn't feel right, or that you're tired of doing something a certain way because you realize it's not working for you, is when you have the most amazing opportunity to then tame this rascal right here. I want to make sure I don't want to miss anything. So remember, after the beginning of this, we talked about getting in your canoe, facing it up current, and just paddling like mad. I mean, super hard. I want you to visualize what that would be like, and then I want you to feel what that would feel like inside your body. For many, that's been your model of success. To push through no matter what and make things work, even if nothing changes. And I can tell you, there can be nothing that feels worse than knowing that you're working your behind off to succeed at something and for nothing to change. Makes your inner critic happy because things will mean status quo. But for the person who wants to change and hasn't quite got that dialed in, it can be challenging. So let's talk about how we could do this differently. We do the same thing every day, and some days we even push ourselves harder, right? Because we think that will make us more successful. What if there was another way? A way that freed both you and your inner critic and allowed you to live harmoniously with one another. How would that feel? It sounds so simple in nature, I know. But both you and your inner critic dismiss it as being a consideration because, quite honestly, you've become very accustomed to living the way that you're living, even if it's kind of miserable. We get used to status quo, right? We get used to it because there's a feeling of certainty that goes along with that. And right now we're living in very uncertain times, which is triggering a lot of this because we don't feel so certain. We don't feel so confident about what's going on. We're also seeing a lot of people's beliefs and fears and that coming on social media, and very divided in many ways, and to the point of, hey, I just want you to hear me. I just want you to understand me. That's what a lot of that is. Wherever their moral compass may be, whether it be wear a mask, don't wear a mask, do this, don't do this, it's your moral compass that you are pulling your beliefs from, saying this is what I believe in. I think you should wear a mask. I think I shouldn't wear a mask. And then trying to convince everyone else as to why your belief is right usually has an underlying limiting belief, especially for those that are standing on the pulpits and shouting it. It's like, nobody believes me. I'm invisible. I'm not being heard. I'm not being validated. I'm not being understood. And those can trigger those other limiting beliefs, which causes us to explode or to push our righteousness on others. So our inner critic doesn't like change, as I mentioned earlier, and will do everything to convince you why you need to remain the same. It's safer this way. Even if it doesn't feel good, even if you're like, I'm so tired of this way of living. When we become aware of these behaviors, our limiting beliefs, our inner critic's voice, we are being given a beautiful opportunity to live more vibrantly, for sure. And it's in the awareness and the behaviors and the actions, paddling upstream against the current, that we're able to consider other options. For example, what if in lieu of paddling upstream against the current so freaking hard every single day, you just stopped? Just stopped. What would happen? Yes, you would begin to drift in a different direction. In a direction that would be less tiring, less frantic, less taxing on you. You would begin to see new things new ways of being, new possibilities that were unobtainable before. You would happen to feel stronger, more energy, and would be able to respond differently. You would meet new people, have new experiences, and be willing to trust yourself on a deeper level. During this current time of the pandemic, we can see this, as I mentioned earlier, people's fears, people's concerns, people's angst, people's sadness. And maybe some people that have been a little bit concerned about sharing their joys through this process of being judged or, felt like they, or being told they aren't taking it serious enough, whatever it may be. That could be happening right now and is happening. I know that you see evidence of that. So when these emotional moments come up, one of the fastest ways to gain composure and calm is to stop. Take some deep breaths. Close your eyes if you need to. This allows us to bring all of our energy back inside of our body. It allows us to ground. It allows us to get centered and regroup again. Another way of doing that is going for a walk. Go out in nature somewhere. Go for a walk down the street. Get some more oxygen in your system. Also, because when we're in that angst or fear-based or any of those things, those vessels inside of us constrict, and we need to open them up again so that we can have clear thinking, make clear decisions, sound judgments for ourselves. Going out for a walk is also going to give you oxygen, and it's going to help you release those energies that are stored up in your muscles to give you some fluidity, to be able to regroup again. Remind yourselves of times in the past when you made it through something that felt very difficult and you did it successfully. Remind yourself of that. That gives you an opportunity to have that little Einstein guy go to that file cabinet and say, oh yeah, this is where success was. This is what it felt like. And give yourself that opportunity to be reminded of that. Our triggers feel dire, feel riddled with angst, so we have to remind ourselves all the time, we're okay. And I'm going to go back through my memory banks and remember times where I felt like this and how I got through this. And learning to tame this inner critic long term is essential. It's not just a quick fix of take some deep breaths or go take a walk. Those are quick fixes. Long term could take some work. And it should take some work because we're wanting to reprogram and rechange some of those labels on the file cabinet so our inner critic isn't going back and grabbing for those. So I would encourage you to reach out to somebody who understands limiting beliefs, triggers, and understands the language that your inner critic is speaking. Sometimes it takes a third party to see what's really going on between the two in order to help both parties mediate through that, work through it successfully, and have a great outcome for both parties. If this is something that resonates with you, and if it's something that you have more questions on, I'm going to go back after this live to look at the comments because I can see them coming through, and I appreciate that so much. And I'll go back through and look at those. But if this is something that resonates with you and is something that you might want to learn a little bit more about or have some further questions on what I talked about, then please reach out and get in touch with me. I would love to have a conversation with you. And I hope that you continue to enjoy this summit. Thank you again, Lisa and Jeff, for this opportunity. Until next time, please know I send you so much love. Bye.